Welcome back, everyone, to the Believer Stands YouTube channel. Today, on episode 7, we'll be talking about when intimacy requires surrender in our podcast series, Journey to Intimacy with God. So, we'll dive right into this topic. It's one of the most heartfelt and transformative topic, especially in my series, Journey to Intimacy with God. Now, given with this topic, we need to understand that intimacy with God is not built on what we gain, but on what we are willing to give up. That shows that we are genuinely going to follow Him no matter what. If God is to test your intimacy with God or your desire to be as intimate with Him as possible, it's going to be off tests like this. My previous video, Staying Close in Seasons of Silence, talked a lot about proving your intimacy to God. True closeness to God happens in the exchange where our will meets His will and our desires bow to His greater purposes. Now let me explain deeper. When you first begin your walk with God, it's often about what He can do for you. That's our early stage of being with God or trying to be intimate with God. He brings stuff like guidance, blessing, peace, direction. But as intimate believers and as intimacy deepens, God begins to deal with ownership. He starts asking, will you still follow me when it's not convenient? Or are you just going to follow me because of what I provide? Now that's bringing your intimacy to one subject, provision, one subject, direction, one subject, peace, blessings. It's not you being intimate with God as Himself because He is God, but because of what He's providing. So God will ask questions. He's not going to obviously ask them, but this is what the situation would look like. Would you still follow me when it's not convenient? Will you let me lead even when it does not match your plan? Surrender is not the point where your relationship stops being transactional, but it becomes transformational. So whatever He does and whatever He may not want to do or He may not do is going to transform you into being more intimate with Him. And you're going to understand this through the process, through your lessons, in the process of Him actually doing this and in your stage of tests. It's not losing your life, it's handing it to the one who can do far more for it. It's handing your life to the one who you submitted it to in the first place. This is where submission comes in. If you choose to be totally submitted to God, you need to hand over every single thing about your life and your life to Him. So He will direct you, He will lead you, He will provide for you, and He will do all other things and more. Our biblical foundation is Luke chapter 9, verse 23. It says, if anyone desires to come after me, let him deny himself, take up his cross daily and follow me. This isn't about suffering for suffering's sake. It's about alignment. Carrying your cross means you die to anything that competes with God's voice in your heart. So you're going to choose God no matter what. And whatever the consequence may be for choosing God, you're going to own up to responsibility and accept it and still choose to follow God. Romans chapter 12 verse 1. Offer your bodies as a living sacrifice. A living sacrifice means continual surrender. Your day-to-day activities, your day-to-day life, everything you do with your body, it's now God's own. It's now God's permission. You take God's permission to do whatever you want to do with your body. Unlike a dead offering, a living one can crawl off the altar. So it's all in your choice. And that's what many believers do. When obedience becomes uncomfortable, they leave because it's uncomfortable. But if you're going to offer your body as a living sacrifice to God, no matter the condition that you find yourself in, you're still going to stay in the sacrifice and as the sacrifice. Intimacy requires staying on the altar, even if it costs your comfort. Let me give an analogy to explain better. Like refining gold. When gold is refined, it's heated until every impurity rises to the surface. That's surrender in spiritual terms. God uses situations, convictions, and even delays most times to bring hidden attitudes, attachment to the surface, to reveal the true state of your heart, through situations, through circumstances, through maybe even arguments, through misunderstanding, just to reveal how imperfect you are. And most times, He does this when we think we are perfect. He's not pushing you or trying to lead you into destruction. He's purifying you so you can reflect his heart more clearly. Now, to explain surrender and submission in a more understanding way, think of surrender and submission like being in a car with God. At first, you let him ride in the passenger seat. He gives you direction, but you are still driving. You are in control, but he gives direction. But the deeper you grow, which is what we should desire as believers, is that he asks for the wheel. But the problem is you are used to driving and you are used to him giving directions while you are driving. But no, the situation is now changed. You know the routes, you know your comfort zone, but the path to deeper intimacy is rarely familiar. It's usually uncomfortable, yet transforming. Sometimes God will drive you through routes that look like delay, losses, silence, but they always lead to destiny. Surrender doesn't mean losing yourself. It means finding your truest self in God. Galatians chapter 4 verse 19 talks about when Paul said, "My little children, of whom I travail in birth again until Christ is formed in you." The truest state of our lives as Christians and believers is that we revealed exactly what Christ ordained for us when he talked about knowing us in our mother's womb before we were formed in Jeremiah. That state we were in when he knew us before we were formed in our mother's womb is the state that he ordained us to be in. So that knowledge of him knowing you, because think about it, like you've not been born into this earth, you've not accomplished anything, you've not made any decision, but God says he knew you already. That knowledge is what he ordained you to be, is what he knows you as. And before you become what he ordained you to be, you have to understand that Christ has to be formed in you. And for Christ to be formed in you, you have to deliberately surrender to him and submit to him and let him take control over you and rule your life. And when he begins to rule your life, you begin to fulfill purpose, you begin to fulfill destiny, you begin to become more intimate with him in your journey with God. The more you give up yourself for God, the more he reveals himself to you. Intimacy grows in the soil of trust, and trust grows through surrender. Now, I have like 5 points to talk about and to emphasize because they are quite relatable in this episode. Surrender isn't a one-time event, it's a daily choice. That's living every day surrendering to God, no matter your will, no matter your decisions, no matter how you feel. As long as you know that this is the right path for you and this is what God wants for you, you have to daily submit to it. And the more you are killing the will to rebel against God, your will of maybe your ambitious desire as a person, but trust me, God is more ambitious than you. You just have to surrender to him and let him take control and see how wonderful your life will transform. True freedom isn't by doing what you want, it's being free to obey. Most times, some believers find it hard to obey God, even if they confess and say and claim that they love God and want to follow him daily, but they still find themselves finding it hard to obey God and to obey his instructions. Most times, it's because we've followed the wrong step for too long and we've been deceived. Satan deceives a lot, so it makes us feel like freedom is by doing things that we want to, but that's not really us wanting to do that. Because when you're in your atmosphere of worship or prayer and you're trying to be close with or intimate with God, that desire is no longer there. So it's just like maintaining that atmosphere and consciousness that this is something that the devil wants to bring to deviate us from God, to make us a step backwards from God. And when you maintain an atmosphere of worship and prayer, that desire that Satan brings dies, and the desire to worship God and to desire him more and more is present. That is your true state. This is the obedience. This is the freedom that we should live by, not the freedom of doing whatever we want, because sometimes those things that we want are what we are to offer as submissions, offer as sacrifice, and to submit ourselves to God and allow him direct us. Because we wouldn't even submit ourselves to God if we were perfect in the first place, if we could live a right life in the first place, if we could earn heaven without Jesus in the first place. We were not perfect, we were born imperfect, we were born with sin, and we need Jesus Christ to fulfill every single purpose that he wants us to fulfill and to make it in heaven. Now, I believe this video has blessed you guys. It wasn't quite long, but it was a blessing. And like, share, comment, subscribe. Follow for more, and we'll see you in the next one.